Welcome to the first talk of the second season of Tiny Lab Talks. Tiny Lab Talks are short conversations, around 30 minutes, between international guests and members of the University of Aveiro. These sessions aim to create a motivating moment of exchange between specialists from related fields, encouraging the sharing of ideas and experiences in an accessible and inspiring way by promoting science and culture through relaxed and engaging interactions between researchers, artists, creatives, and the public. The conversations are streamed live on the University of Aveiro YouTube channel, and today we are here at the Rectory building since we are running the Campus Jazz, the jazz festival organized by the University of Aveiro. It's a real pleasure and honor to be moderating this conversation with Ben Wendel and João Martins. I think it's appropriate in this setting, in this context, for us to speak about matters that are not only musical, but also extra-musical. Mm-hmm. Or at least we can negotiate what's our take on that. Because whenever we speak about careers or the pathways that we choose when we decide to be musicians or scientists or wherever, usually there's this idea, and specifically about music, that when we talk about musical aspects, we leave a lot of societal aspects about interactions, networking, and related skills that are really important nowadays. At least I would like to hear your take on that, both of you. Since obviously things are not done without artistic quality and without motivation, but also there's other skills that get into the final result. And nowadays, I think for us, in the last 20 years, there's been a kind of huge change, a great transformation on how we communicate with audiences, how we communicate with the press, how we somehow make our work available to others. And and you started your career more or less, we are contemporary of this big change. I would like for you to first of all, does this make sense to you? This kind of, do you have to be you have to double yourself whenever you are thinking about this, about the strictly musical aspect, and then okay, I have to run to get a gig, or I have to run to try to sell the record, so I have to. Does this make sense? These are two separate fields on your head, or is this kind of, it's all the same, and you're just separating artificially these two kind of domains that are equally important in the musician's career?
For me, it's all the same. Yeah, I mean, I think there was about 100 years, let's say, where we had this window of time where you could take music and you could record it on a physical medium, vinyl, CD, cassette, and you could sell that, and you could make a lot of money at that. So during that time period, an artist, let's say like a Miles Davis, let's say, could maybe 100%, if they wanted to, separate their musical life from their business life. I think during that time, But now I think everything is a little different. And I think that the emergence of the internet has kind of, the way I like to think about it is, before the internet there were sort of, let's say, gatekeepers, cultural gatekeepers, right? So like if you know, let's say, if the New York Times wrote an article about you, that could actually really have this dramatic effect on your career because they were a gatekeeper. But the internet has kind of flattened out the gates, and it's kind of flattened out even what you might call high art or low art or in the middle art. All of that is sort of irrelevant now. Now the thing that's relevant, for better or worse, is data. What's relevant now is views, is engagement. And, you know, it's still relevant to have people show up to a show. That's really relevant. But how you do that has changed. So, whereas in the past, I think an artist could, again, mainly focus on music, and then other mechanisms of the industry, like a manager or the record label, would sort of work on the other aspects. Now it just doesn't work that way. Not even for those people. You know, for someone like me, I have booking agencies, I have management, I have a record label. But because there's no gatekeepers anymore, ultimately the responsibility is on the musician to lead and to guide and to interact with that part of their life now. So I don't know if it's good or bad, it just is. You know, I think about these 20 years and how much everything has changed, and I think a lot of this time period won't make sense to me until later. You know, I think I have more questions than answers, but I do know that when I look at most musicians of any tier that are doing really well today, both musically and professionally, in a way they are handling all of these aspects themselves. They have help, but it's really changed. It's not something that they go, you handle that. It doesn't matter, whatever tier. They're at the center, and they're the ones making those decisions and having to kind of steer the ship.
Yeah. So artistic control, whatever that means,
Yeah.
it's not separated into all those domains. You have really to have a kind of to maintain and to steer.
You do have to be much more, I think so, because I think because the gates have come down, what the general audience outside, beyond the music, what the people find most interesting now is, let's say, a certain kind of authenticity. And it's very hard to create authenticity if you have other people creating the authenticity. And most people nowadays can really tell the difference. So ultimately the responsibility goes back to the artist. And when I speak to older generation musicians, let's say there's a bit of a divide. I was talking about this in the master class. There are a lot of people decided, I don't want to interface with these changes. You know, I worked professionally without this stuff. Why do I have to do it now? I don't want to do it, right? And so they just don't, you know. But then I was mentioning people like Ron Carter or Herbie Hancock. Instead, they sort of embraced these changes. And again, they have a lot of help. But at the end of the day, they're at the center of that change. And I think it's kind of amazing. I personally, I love it. I love seeing, you know, someone like Ron Carter not only sharing his musicianship, but just sharing who he is. Yeah, so. But yeah, it's been a big shift. It's been a big shift. And anytime there's a huge cultural shift of any kind, like, you know, using horses for transportation, then suddenly cars, there's some people that shift with the times, and there's other people that don't. And I think with the internet, it's exactly the same. I can see it across all fields of music. I see people that just really didn't like it and didn't want to change. And some have been able to make it work, and others have not. And it's not good or bad. It just is the reality of the evolution of music. And I'm sure, knock on wood, if I live long enough, I'm sure we will see many more changes.
Even nowadays, even in higher culture, there's people surrendering to creating content. You have to somehow create content to maintain a kind of and to develop your audience, or else it's going to be, obviously jazz stands in the middle. There's a French sociologist who called it a kind of art moyen. It stands in the middle, like supposedly it came from the people.
Yeah, it did.
And it ascended to venues like very privileged venues. And still today, I find a lot of people wondering where they stand in relation to this hierarchy of cultures, whatever that means in the practical sense. There's students, jazz students here. I don't know if they really care about this. They feel it. I think they feel it on a daily basis, being probably judged by choosing jazz in relation to other art form. You came from a kind of a classical background. Does this relate to your experience when you embraced jazz? It was like your parents felt bad or something, or they, I'm joking. This is not relevant. It might be relevant if you want it to be relevant. If you want to be relevant.
No, luckily for me, my parents and the people that I learned with did not discriminate against different kinds of music. Music is music. There's two types of music, as Duke Ellington said, right? Good music and bad music. It's just all music. But culturally, things have shifted a lot. And in a way, what we think of as, let's say, traditional jazz, right? That in a way is becoming the new classical music, right? In the sense that there are organizations all around the world that are building endowments and beautiful halls like Jazz at the Lincoln Center, like SF Jazz, on and on and on, the BIM House, on and on and on, that are serious high art cultural institutions that are elevating that music. And so in a way it's sort of the next chapter, let's say. It's a much younger music, but it's heading in that direction. And then just like I said, the gates are coming down. Also between these genres, the walls are coming down. The other day I met an unbelievable classical piano player. Her name's Yuzhe Wang. And she's ridiculous, and also incredibly effective at social media. It's both, and this is just the new reality, Or like, I'm seeing things programmed at Carnegie Hall that defy genre. Like, you can't even place where it's supposed to be. Is it a classical concert? Is it a jazz concert? Is it a new? Nobody could answer it. So all of these worlds are starting to collide much more in a way where they're not being kept separate. Even opera. Opera is a perfect example. High art, right? I have had the privilege of playing with Terence Blanchard a lot. He wrote an amazing. He's written 2 operas. And they did extremely well at the Met, and to me this was a huge moment, a huge moment of worlds colliding in the best possible way. But if you were to ask, I can't speak for Terence, but if you were to ask him, I'm pretty sure he would say music is music. You know, so beyond the culture is changing and things are shifting, but I think they're shifting mostly in a positive way.
João, can I please?
No,
I have to bring you in. I have a question.
I can talk about this because I have a really fresh example to say, because tomorrow we are going to play with an orchestra that is made 95% of classical musicians that study here in the university, and suddenly they are looking outside and they look to Ben, which is one of the greatest saxophone players nowadays, and they are playing with a jazz musician, but they are classical musicians. So, but they have the minds opening to do this kind of music, and even if they don't are used to play it, but still I believe that they listen to jazz. I know that they listen to jazz, and I know that they are really excited to do this kind of music. So this was not like that in 20 years ago.
Yeah,
for instance,
it wasn't even a possibility.
There's not a possibility. The classical musicians didn't want to mix with jazz musicians. That was not possible. But this new generation, because of everything that you talk about, even social media and stuff like that, it's quite open to this blending genres, and I think it's amazing that this is happening.
I could see also, I think over time, I think schools will slowly start to lead the way, right? It's a lot. Like, if you want to be a classical musician, there's 400 years of history in music, and there's so much repertoire to learn. And if you want to be a jazz musician, it's a huge amount of repertoire. So, in one sense, maybe it's impossible to have it all. But I think, as someone who started as a classical musician and then transitioned, I do remember there being this very clear divide between, being a classical musician, reading notes, and improvisation. Improvisation was this thing over there that was like
Too far. Yes.
very far away, and really like, what is. So I think over time, like with situations like this, that I hope that schools and degrees, they start to blend things a bit more, because the more classical musicians understand harmony and improvisation beyond the written note, it's just going to make everything better, and vice versa. So many jazz musicians practice classical repertoire. So it's part of their training.
Seeing you so engaged with this kind of educational outreach activities. I mean, I was talking with João that it's like, and he was saying that you were like really generous, really present, and that also means that like you feel like there's a role that you have to fulfill in that sense. Because you created a distinctive voice, really distinctive voice. I think for everyone in the jazz world recognizes that. And I'm not saying that you have to assume a kind of role of like of any kind, but this is really important. I mean, I was seeing the kids coming out of the auditorium, and they were like, this is not a typical class. They came kind of empowered somehow.
Yeah,
they feel it's important. You invest your time.
Yeah, you have to. I think so, because it was done for me. It's I say that as a musician, we're on a continuum, and what we get to do, we get to do because people before us built the road. And there's younger generations, and it's good to give them directions too, give them a map, you know, and we're all on that same continuum. And I just think, yeah, energetically it's so important to give back. I mean, I have a million memories of my heroes being generous with me and sharing information and sharing their time, and it changed my life, you know. So I think it would, I think it'd be unfair not to share in this way. And also, I just think it's really fun. It's really inspiring to work with students. Like that energy of wanting to learn and work is like it's very infectious in a good way, and it affects me positively too. To see that, you know, sometimes we'll get in a conversation like, I want to practice more now. You know, so it goes both ways. Yeah.
When you moved from the West Coast to New York,
Yeah.
and do you have like people that you really that you might point out as, you know, these people were really generous to me at a point.
Yeah.
They passed me
Yeah.
some knowledge that now you feel like it's really relevant.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing with us a few names, just a few people who are, like, I mean, not academically or in an informal setting even?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the masterclass for sure. Number one, Billy Higgins. Yeah, he was such a huge positive force in Los Angeles, and I took a year off from school and I went back home, and I was very lucky. I had a friend that I met in high school, a sax player named Terrace Martin, and we were buddies. And he took me down to Leimert Park. He took me down to a little venue called the World Stage, which was Billy's place. And I got to hang with Billy that whole year. We would do sessions at his home, and playing with him was absolutely life-changing. And the thing about him was he never taught me, you know. He not just being around him, playing with him, hearing him talk about life, that was the lesson, you know. But it totally changed my life. Yeah. Who else in the scene? There's so many people over the years. I didn't get to know him better till later, but like just living a block away, one of our neighbors when I was growing up was Peter Erskine, and you know, he definitely had an effect on me. And who were some other players? Later on, when I was going to school, I mentioned this to Joe, I got to hang with Joe Henderson. That really affected me. Phil Woods, Benny Carter. Yeah. Yeah, so like older generation people that were just really generous with their time. Yeah, I'll always be grateful. Yeah.
So let me just ask you something that it's kind of relevant, because we are in the university and campus jazz. It's born in a specific context. Do you like when you bring people to the band? Do you feel an effect in the academic community, in the campus, that the festival is creating this kind of awareness about jazz or about improvised music? You feel like you're succeeding in that?
I believe yes. I want to believe yes. That's why it's important to keep bringing personalities like Ben or like Jeff Pollard, like we had this year or last year, Mike Juliana or Shai Maestro, and they all shared the same thing, that they were conscious enough to be here with us, with mind and soul, and try to understand our context of, for instance, classical musicians playing with them, with, in the orchestra, or for instance, our master students playing with Jeff Baller, for instance, and suddenly I think it's quite expressive, the feeling that they bring to our students. I see. I always talk with them after the concerts, after the gigs, and they all say it was great. I usually hear in the orchestra scene, they usually say, "Oh, this was the best concert of my life," because these are unique experience, and I believe that they will carry for the rest of their lives, and this is why we try to bring people like Ben here, because I believe we are trying to create these moments that will probably lead to something in the future. So that's the importance of having these amazing musicians with us.
You guys are doing a great job, really.
Thank you.
Really. We are approaching the end. I would like just ask Ben. I mean, you're in a point of your career where I guess the recognition is kind of wide, and I don't know if that translates in the power to do whatever you want. Probably not. I mean, but
every musician would say no.
Yeah. But if you know the next projects that you like are evolving in your head, and like cherishing, just taking care of, wanting it to become a reality. Can you unveil a little bit about what you're preparing?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple things coming up. I have a project called Barcode, which is a really ambitious ensemble where it's me in the middle with my saxophone and my effects, and then 4 of the best up-and-coming vibraphonists on the scene, Joel Ross, Simon Moulier, Patricia Brennan, and Juan Diego Villalobos, all just incredible vibraphonists. And then the instrumentation is 5-octave marimba, vibraphones, effects, glockenspiel, chromatic balafon, and I'm really proud of that. I'm going to be starting to tour that next year. So that's kind of the next big thing coming out. I also did I did a really interesting show. I got a commission from the BIM House to be part of their Reflex series, and I developed a show that was called Soul, S-O-L. And basically I wrote 80 minutes of solo saxophone music with effects, and worked with a technologist that he develops audio reactive lighting software. So the whole show involved situations where I would play music and it would change the color of the lights, the movement of the lights, or there would be things where the dancer, her movement could trigger saxophone sounds, or there was moments where I had these sensors on me where I could move and it would change the lights or change the sound and move the sound around. So it was a really crazy project, but we were lucky enough to have it documented by a wonderful French film company. So that film will probably come out later this year. Yeah. So
seems like a lot of things are.
There's other stuff too. I always have something in the oven. Yeah.
How many times does it take for you to prepare a project? When you're thinking about something, an idea, or you meet someone, like you were talking about meeting someone from a different discipline,
Yeah.
kind of someone that is not related to music or something, but
Yeah.
how does it click in your head?
Yeah,
Just
just-
a project.
It really depends. Like that particular project that took almost a year to develop because it was new. It was things that didn't even exist. We had to create new software for it to work. And then, yeah, and then other things like that barcode project. I don't know. I think I wrote most of the music over a period of about 2 months. Yeah.
So you had a commission also
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah. From a wonderful presenting venue in New York called the Jazz Gallery. Yeah.
We could be here.
Yeah, I bet.
We only have one more hour. Is that it? No?
Yeah, I think we have to
finish.
close
Cool.
this conversation. It's really a huge honor for me to be with you this afternoon.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope we see each other really soon. And tomorrow, João, please invite everyone to come.
Try to show up tomorrow at our concert in Fábrica das Ideias, na Gafanha da Nazaré. 9:30, Ben Wendel and Orquestra de Jazz da Universidade de Aveiro.
Yeah, you cannot miss it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.